Good morning, friends. It is good to see you here for our Wednesday live stream. Our topic today is one that has been suggested by one of our avid and frequent viewers. What about fill-in notes? So let me put that here. What is a fill-in note? That's the question, right? Notes that are not necessarily part of the melody would be called fill-in notes. I gotta stop. Good morning, Doug. So I'm going to use boiled cabbage for the mountain dulcimer as a way of talking about this. We have this melody that is often the first one that everyone plays on the mountain dulcimer. I just did a bunch right there. Boiling cabbage down, boys, turn them hoe cakes round. Only thing that I can do is boil them cabbage down. A two-part song, an A and a B part. I can keep my rhythm hand just going, boiling cabbage down, boys, and only strum to match the rhythm of the melody. Or I can keep the rhythm going while I sing. Boil them cabbage down, boys, turn them hoe cakes round. The only thing that I can sing is boil them cabbage down. And that pattern that's going on here is the backup rhythm as well as some notes, because I'm playing some drone notes that are droning. That would be a fill-in note. And one of the things I noticed is when I play with groups that have clubs and they have a large group in a room that are trying to play together, if you don't put that stuff in there, somebody won't honor the rest. So boil them cabbage down, turn them hoe cakes round. We are all tempted when we have space to fill it. It's that old dictum, nature abhors a vacuum. It wants to fill it in. So and the thing that happens when you're in a jam session or playing with other people, everyone is afraid of being late. And so you're afraid you're late, so you jump a little bit and start because you don't want to be late. You don't want to drag things down. People have talked to you about that. And the person next to you goes, oh, I'm late because they went early, so I'm going to go early. Pretty soon the whole train is picking up speed and going downhill, and it can crash. So that's one of those unconscious things that groups will use to fill in space. Here's an example. Wildwood Flower. Now, that is when there isn't any space at the end of that, people just go from the first phrase to the second phrase. Da, 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 da. But there is another tradition. There's another measure there where something happens. I have been in groups that do it the one way, and someone who does it the other way comes in, and there is a confusion and negotiation that has to go on there. Now, in a singing song, it's very important that the singer has a chance to get their breath. That fill-in space is a place for that to happen. Adding some fill-in notes or strums are a way to remind everybody, we're going to let the singer breathe. Okay, everybody? So that's the function it serves there. But now the question is, what notes should I use? In playing with my buddy Vi Wickham in our duo Fiddle Wham Diddle, we did some fun stuff with this tune because it was one that he learned early on as a fiddle player. I believe he told me his father told him he had to learn it. and I learned it as a mountain dulcimer player. So we have the bare bones. Boil them cabbage down, turn them hoe cakes round. Only thing that I can do is boil them cabbage down. Now, as we get playing with it, we play around with the tune, and you might have noticed this. We're on a 2 and then a 3 and then a 2 and a 1. But if I could put boil them cabbage down. Now, there was some fancy stuff in there. A part. Now, that was a fiddling type fill-in where the melody bounces or skips, and all we do is fill in all the passing tones or the notes that are not chord tones in between. But we keep the strong strum and the strong beat so that when we get to those notes that are the normal chord tones, we're hitting them on their normal place. So that's another example of some fill-in notes. Now I'm going to turn to the hammer dulcimer, and let's talk about what happens here. So let me change my camera. So Soldier's Joy. That's kind of a bare bones melody that sketches out the structure of the tune. 5 3 1 3 5 8 8. It just plays around on the chord tones that are a normal part of that melody. New chord, so I'm on the D chord, A chord, A7 actually because of that G note. Back to the D chord. D and A7 chord there. Now, one of the ways that people fill this one in they will just do more of those notes. They're still in part of the chord. We just do more of them. I think I need to flip my camera because I don't think that's showing correctly. There we go. That's better. So, and then the B part, that's kind of the skeleton. I'm using those chord tones again, and the passing tones. So I basically took what were quarter notes and played all eighth notes and filled in with different variations of what those eighth notes were. That time, instead of doing the bouncing stuff, I just did the walking through every particular one. And that suggested a whole new line, which is a nice variation. That time, I took what was down here, the jump, and turned it upside down. Both of those work. And I can do my fill notes up above. Now, that's in a fast fiddle tune where I'm just playing a lot of extra notes, but I'm filling in the melodic lines. Hey, Rusty. Thanks, Doug, for confirming that I had it backwards the first time. The camera angles thing is a challenge. Now, what if you have a quieter song? Now there, I filled it in with some chords, just stretching out the chords. This is Southwind. In this case, what I did there is just add a single drone note. We're in the key of D. I'm adding the fifth of that chord. When the chord changes to the 5 chord, and by staying on that note for so long, I'm setting up the expectation it's not going to move. And when it goes to the G, it feels very satisfying. And it sets up this bass little move from the A, the G to the F sharp. I could also in this case, what I'm doing is filling in with chords. And then I had a linear walk. Now, the challenge with any of these kinds of fills, whether you're on the hammer dulcimer or on the mountain dulcimer, is making sure that the melody is more prominent than whatever you're filling it in with. I'm going to use the analogy that's the opposite of the pie. If I'm making a pie, everybody talks about the crust, but everybody enjoys the filling. So I'm going to say the tune is the filling and the crust is the kind of the structure. So what you do with the filling is what's important. There are times, though, and this is why it's not just what, but when, there are times when it can be so busy that you can completely lose the tune, or you can have a busy part of your arrangement and then pull out whatever was there to let the dulcimer do what it does, which is just resonate. Let's think of a song. Um, I went to a waltz because it's kind of nice. My Advent class right now, we're working on a Come Emmanuel. Uh, Now, what I started doing there was say I let it just ring, and then I thought, what happens if I give a little chord description, which is with an interesting chord, which is an E, B, and adding a second. So I haven't worked this out ahead of time. I'm experimenting, and that's the other thing I wanted to say is it's important to experiment so that you can come up with, you can see what's available to you, what's within your wheelhouse, what could you do with your skill set, and to find and to bump into things like, oh, I didn't know that was going to be there. I think it's important that we don't just rule out anything from the beginning, but experiment, explore, and then taste it. I mean, I don't know a cook who cooks without tasting what's going on in the broth, unless you watch the British baking show. And the people don't know that they've put salt instead of sugar in their sweet dough until it's tasted by the judges, which is really a sad thing. It's a very sad thing. Mm. So let me just pause and ask if you have any questions about this topic. I want to thank Jim Fry for suggesting it. So what I suggested we do is add some chords or add the non-chord tones as the basic kind of what are my options. When to do it is when you have space to do it. Whether to do it is a stylistic choice. So, Jim, good question. Does it work to break up the rhythm in the fills rather than a constant beat? It really does depend on what you're aiming for in your arrangement. I was recording my Daddy Won't You Carry Me song, and the recording engineer, because I had this kind of groove going, and he said what he tends to do is have the melody or the A part or the verse have one kind of a groove feel, and the chorus and the bridge have each have their own kind of a rhythmic fill. And that wasn't what I was going for in that tune. I wanted when the break came at the in the bridge, I wanted that to be so stark and changing that I didn't want a different thing. But that is an important possibility. You could have a very notey tune. Let's see. Um, that's a very notey tune. There's not really room for a lot of fills. So one of the other ways to think about it is how can I take something out of it? So what I did there is I accented something that was not on the beat as a way to give us some interest. And then I waited a little bit. So in that case, because it was already a very notey song, what I did was not add extra notes so much. I added some harmony notes or some drone notes, but I was accenting in different locations for rhythmic interest, which is a good point. When we're playing what can be called um, machine gun dulcimer, we're just playing the constant thing over and over again. Talon, what we talked about playing were other chord tones or the notes between the chord tones. The example I used earlier, and I don't know if you were here for that, was in Boil 'em Cabbage Down. So in there, boil them cabbage. That's a very fiddle way of doing it, where I'm fiddling and playing. I have these spots where the melody lands, and I'm going to fill in all the gaps in between with the notes that are available to me. I didn't fill up every possible space. I chose where I was going to do, and that has the effect of what Jim was asking about. Do you break up the rhythm a little bit? So it is possible to get over noted by just playing every kind of fill that you could. This is and then Soldier's Joy on the Mountain Dolls. That's kind of the skeleton. So I'm playing notes that are part of this scale, and I'm either playing the chord tones, which are expected, or the non-chord tones, which are not expected, which also belong to this scale. So the beauty of a dulcimer is those chromatic notes that are going to make it sound less, are have greater possibility of disturbing the ear and making us think you're playing the wrong thing, are not going to be available because they're not in the way. Now, if you're playing chromatic dulcimer, it's a completely different issue. On your mountain dulcimer, you've got the frets. Every one of those frets that are part of that scale are possible. Some of them you'll like better than others, and that'll be your criterion. Doug's question: How do you not get caught in trying not to think ahead? I got caught in the double negative. How do I try not to get stuck by constantly thinking ahead all the time? Well, one of the things is when I'm alone, I can just try some ideas. And so that means I've got to have everything ready for me to play. Last night, I was just feeling sad and I didn't know what to do. So I sat down and played, and it helped me embrace my sadness, but it was here. So it was available for me to play. And it was a good thing. It just let me sit there for a while. And there were some brand new melodic ideas I had not thought of before. There are other times when I'll sit down and say, well, yesterday afternoon after my digging into the Pete Celtic class, I was playing around with some ideas for the Sally in the Garden tune that I played for you. And what I do is just try some ideas out, see if I like them, see if I don't, see if they're difficult, see if I can do them right now, if it looks like something I might be able to do in the future, if it's the kind of thing I'm going to have to back off on my tempo in order to be able to do it. I'm putting all these things together, but I sometimes capture those so I can listen to them without playing. And that's just, setting your phone or some recording device to play it so I can listen back to it, because sometimes the coolest idea when I'm playing it, when I listen back, just sounds like confusion. So in the end, then I won't use that one. I use the other one. Or I'll change I'll say, well, that was really fun to do, but it was fun for me as a player, not fun for me as a listener. And if it's not fun for me as a listener, it's likely it's not going to be fun for other listeners too. Yeah. Sadness is one of those human emotions, and it's part of how we know we're alive. And it means that there was something probably lost. And so it helps me explore what is the grief. And this season, I like this season, but it's also the season where in the Northern Hemisphere, things are dying. They're dropping their leaves. Even though I'm in California where we're getting ready, there are some things that are doing that, the deciduous things, and other things are saying the rainy season's coming. We can't wait. We're going to bloom. Like my birds of paradise out in front, they're blooming like crazy because it's the season to do that. So it's a constant up and down, ebb and flow. I don't know if you have other questions about this topic. Yes, Jim is suggesting, can adding a dominant seventh note in fill, even if it's not the melody? And this may be where you're talking about, Talon, is there are notes that are not part of the scale that sometimes can work. Um, let me think of a. In that case, and the dominant seven, here's the interesting thing about dominant sevens. When I'm in D, I don't have a C natural, but when I play the 5 chord of the A, the G that's part of the D scale is the dominant seventh of the A chord. So it's already part of what's going on, but can I use one that doesn't belong? Now the first time I just went from the G to the D, which is the 1 chord, to the 4 chord without using that, because the dominant 7 on the 1 chord takes us to the 4. That's without it. So the important thing to think about if I'm going to add a dominant 7 as a fill is it points in a direction. I want to be sure that it's pointing in the direction I want to go. Now, if I was going to use the dominant 7 or the flat 7 on the G chord, which is the 4 chord, it's going to take me out of the key, because G7 always wants to take me to C. So I can try it and see if it's what I want. In any key, the 5 chord has the dominant 7 built into the notes available. The other ones do not. So, well, we are at the end of our time today. If you have further questions or you have suggestions for topics that you want to see covered in our Wednesday live stream, please feel free to write me at steve@dulcimercrossing.com. And I'm grateful. Thanks, Jim, for your suggestions. They've been very good ones, and I've got some plans from the other ones you've made. I do want to call attention to, so I'm going to share my screen, because tomorrow is our Leap Forward class with Jim Miller. Jim is he's a retired elementary school teacher, but as part of his elementary school teaching in the far eastern corner of Tennessee, or Tennessee as he would always say it, where every elementary school that he was working in, they had bands, acoustic string bands. So they'd have dulcimers and banjos and guitars and mandolins and things like that. And so he was always teaching those kids how music works. As a practical musician, you need to know some things. So that's what he's going to talk about, is practical musical theory. And that'll be tomorrow. It's at 4 p.m. Pacific across all the time zones to 7 p.m. Eastern. And premium members of Dulcimer Crossing get access to that, as well as the archives of those. So that is coming up tomorrow. Tonight, my Advent, it's not here, my Advent class continues. And we're prepping, because Advent is the preparatory season before Christmas in the liturgical church's calendar. And for the 4 Wednesdays in December before Christmas, we're going to be using the setting I composed for Dulcimer Friendly Evening Prayer. We spent October learning that. Now we're working on Advent tunes, and then we're going to have a Zoom play along for those services on every Wednesday. So if that's something you're interested in, write to me and I can give you information about that, because we want that to be a contemplative and joyful time as we prepare. And let's see, next week at the Wednesday live stream is on Wednesday. Then Thursday is the North Georgia Foothills Dulcimer Association's festival. Registration is closed for that, but concert tickets are still available. If you're interested in seeing several of us who are teaching and performing there. So that's the next big festival that's coming up. And then the Quarantine faculty, I think it's almost 50 performers are going to be performing the Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday in the week before Christmas. And my set is on Monday of that week. Anyway, that's all the details. It's Nancy, it's on both Hammered and Mountain for Advent, because it's friendly for all the dulcimers. All right. So we will see you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.